Thanks, everybody. Thanks so much. Welcome to Build. I'm your host, Ricky Camilleri. He has made some of the most beautiful and haunting films there are, and now Wim Wenders is turning his camera on one of the most important figures of our time. Well, of any time, really, the Pope. With Pope Francis, a man of his word, Wenders follows and intimately interviews the man himself. A pope that since his tenure began has made a number of very big and sometimes controversial announcements on the part of the Catholic Church. Let's take a look.
For the first time in history, the Pope opens his doors to address the questions and issues we face together as a leader whose faith inspires the world.
I have the distinct honor of presenting to you Pope Francis of the Holy See.
Buonasera.
From award-winning director Wim Wenders.
Nos dice que no se puede servir a dos señores. O servimos a Dios o servimos a las riquezas.
Smiling here in the studio at the looks of this car. We are used to the big American limousines, and this is a Mr. Bean car by comparison, and yet it's going to take him around town.
En las familias discutimos, en las familias a veces vuelan los platos. No voy a hablar de la suegra. En la familia hay dificultades, pero esas dificultades se superan con amor.
In a divided world,
Saber escuchar. Las diferencias nos dan miedo, porque nos hacen crecer.
one leader has a mission.
Non è debolezza la tenerezza, è fortezza.
To bring us together.
Abbiamo tanto da fare e dobbiamo farlo insieme.
Everybody, please welcome the great Wim Wenders.
Thank you, Ricky.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks so much for being here, for coming back. Congratulations on the film, premiering at Cannes. Congratulations on getting the chance to interview and hang out with the Pope. Let's start there and then talk about the movie. What was that like to just be in the presence of the Pope?
We didn't exactly hang out together, but
See movies and
no, or soccer, no. But we were quite close. I actually was face to face with him 4 times, each time 2 hours, and I thought that was such an incredible privilege that I figured that that was my duty to share that. So I shot it in a way that everybody who watches the movie is face to face and really close to the Pope.
yeah, you shoot a number of the interviews in the kind of interrotron sort of way where he's looking directly into the lens. What was it like getting the Pope to sort of be interviewed that way? Did you use the kind of interrotron way where he's looking at your face and a prompter sort of thing?
Well, I explained the whole technology to him before we started for the first time, and he understood it quite well, and he was only concerned, what do you see? So I took him around to my place, and he realized I was going to see him the same way on a monitor, and that via the technology in between, we were face-to-face, and he liked it, and then he was really working along with it, and very intense, and we forgot the technology in between, and we were eye to eye, only I knew in the back of my head, I share that position with everybody.
What were your biggest questions of the Pope going into an interview with him?
I had 55 questions of it.
What was the question you were most nervous about asking him?
There were a couple of tricky questions, like the question about pedophilia, question about gay people, but a lot of the questions were sort of the kind of questions you never thought you could ask the Pope about life and death as well, about very personal things, how should I feel about my own death. And the astonishing thing was he answered each and every question fearlessly, spontaneously, directly. He was not afraid of any question, and he's also a great listener, and that's why he's also a great talker, because he can do both.
for one of the first times in my life, yes, in my life, is the Pope seems to me to be presenting himself as a real person rather than as some sort of omnipotent presence.
Yes, he's not kidding when he's talking about closeness. After all, he took on the name Francis. And Saint Francis, who he's referring to, that's what he was all about, being close to other people, being close to nature, close to other religions, creating peace between religions. He, as Pope Francis put it, was the apostle of the ear. He listened to the voice of nature and the voice of the poor and excluded. And Pope Francis sees his task in line with that name he picked up, Francis, and no pope ever had the courage to take on that name because it comes with a pretty heavy burden.
And you kind of tell the story of Saint Francis early on in the film. Where was that footage from? Excuse me.
We shot it.
Oh.
Yes. Oh, that's. I hope that you would say, "Oh," because we shot it like it was an old film we found.
Usually I would notice that. That kills me.
You're not alone. Everybody thinks, oh, Wim found this amazing old footage about St. Francis. I had no budget. You see, this is a very poor film. And the idea to do a reenactment with no art department and going into the 13th century was a little scary. And all we could afford was 3 costumes for 3 friars, so St. Francis and 2 of his friars. That's the only budget we had. So if you can't produce the 13th century, I figured I could just use a camera that makes everything looks old, and this was an actual hand cranker from the 20s that we actually cranked, like Buster Keaton. And it made the contemporary world look old, and it fooled everybody. And if you really look closely, you see cars in the background, but never sees them. But nobody sees them because this camera is magic. It turns everything into ancient history.
It vanishes cars.
Yes, it makes everything disappear. Well, it's actually there, but nobody sees it anymore.
It's a tough time, it seems, for a pope like Pope Francis, in the sense that the Catholic Church's symbolic power across the world has seemed to be diminished a little bit due to the number of scandals that it's been a part of in the last number of years. So to have a pope come along that is so personal and so intentionally and attempting to be of the moment and address so many society's ills, it seems like he has even won another hurdle ahead of him due to just the standing of the Catholic Church right now.
Yes, and one of the first thing he said right off the bat was, I would like to see a poor church dedicated to the poor. So, and of course, the church is a powerful and very rich institution. And he made that clear also in the film and in our talks. As long as the church puts its confidence in wealth, Jesus is not going to be there. So he's pretty radical in his approach, also in the way he lives it. I mean, he doesn't drive in limousines. He comes in these tiny little cars. When he came, we shot in a park, and he peeled himself out of the smallest car available in Italy, which is a Panda. So he really means it, and he lives in a modest pension, and right next to the big palace that popes used to live in before. He tells all of us we can all get by with a little less, and he gives an example that this is possible. And he is damn right, because the fact that there are more and more people excluded from all our growing industries and economies, I mean, if we actually would step on the brake a little bit and let others catch up with us, there would be way more justice on this planet. So he addresses quite worldly things as well.
Did you have conversations with him or a conversation with him prior to filming, or did you show up and start filming? I mean, I'm wondering if you had any sort of conversation that necessitated how you were going to want to shoot with him.
Well, I didn't meet him before we did the first shoot, but we took some time out before. Well, the first thing he did, he put his hand on my shoulder. He said, "I heard a lot about you, but I haven't seen any of your movies."
You were like, not even Paris, Texas? Come on, it's a classic.
No, he said, "It's not my thing. Movies is not my thing." And
But then he whispered, John Wick 2 was great, though.
yeah, I could recommend a few. But even when the film was now premiering at Cannes, he left me a message saying, "Wim, I heard good things about it, your film, and some of people I trust liked it a lot, and I'm happy for it, but you please understand, it's still not my thing."
Is that the first time that's ever happened to you with the subject of a film?
No, it's not the first time. I know actors who really never want to see them, but that would be my only comparison.
Fair enough. I mean, I guess the same thing can go for a documentary subject as well. If you have no control over, what's going on the screen.
I don't like to see myself. 60 Minutes the other day, I'm the only one who's never going to see it. I don't like to see myself, so I sympathize with Pope Francis. I get it.
How has your filmmaking style changed over the years from the early days when you were sort of experimenting in narrative and then you started making documentaries going into something like this? How do you find you have grown, matured, and changed as a filmmaker?
Well, I started early. I think I was 24 when I made my first feature film. And
how old was the rest of your crew? Were you all young?
They were older.
They were older? Did they trust you?
They did. They didn't know what they were doing. Well, I did make a lot of movies, and I started early, but it was a whole different landscape. I mean, this was 50 years ago, and the whole world was different. Not only filmmaking, we used different tools. You needed to have a film camera, and you needed to have access to film and a library to develop it. Today, anybody can make a movie. Everybody here can make a movie. All of us have the abilities, and we can edit them, and we can even show them to the world out of our own computer. So it's a whole different ballgame.
But have you found that devalues the power of the image often?
Yes and no. It makes it more democratic. Yes, it devalues it because it's more difficult to get heard today. I really envy young people today, on one hand, because they have unbelievable possibilities to express themselves. And on the other hand, I think they have a hard time to find their own voice or to get heard. I think it's more difficult than ever to develop your own style, your own handwriting, so to speak.
Well, I agree, because I look back at the era that you made films, and even prior to that, and through the period of shooting on film and shooting with one camera, and you really see filmmakers developing their own language as they figure out how to craft a scene, what the intention is of the camera in each moment of a scene. And that has kind of gone away through the days of just being able to shoot as long as you want and throw 4 cameras up at once.
And today you see your shots right away. At the time when I did my first movies, we saw the stuff a week later when it was developed, and when you had dailies. That's what they were called, dailies. You would see them days later.
Do you have a nostalgia for that time, or are you like, oh, thank God, I can see it right away?
Well, you have more control today. At the time, you had the trust, which was a great thing too. You bonded more, and it was more, you were forced to communicate better. Today, you can shoot, as you said, you can shoot as long as you want, and somehow in between you might get it, but at the time, you needed to know what you wanted.
We got something. We'll cut something together.
Yes, exactly. We fix it in post.
Yeah, exactly. I'm curious, when it came to setting up this film, did the church want to, and the Pope want to make a documentary, and they approached you, or was this something where you approached them? How did Wim Wenders get into the doors of the Vatican?
It wasn't in my life plan, not in my wildest dream. I thought I'd make a movie with the Pope.
Actually, are you a spiritual man yourself?
I am.
Religious man?
I am. I'm a religious person, but still I didn't think I was going to make a movie with the Pope. Actually, nobody would. no filmmaker would, and maybe that's why they thought we should write some of them, at least one of them, that it's a possibility. And so I got this letter, would you be considering talking to us about making a film involving Pope Francis? And I took a deep breath and walked around the block. That was quite unusual. And then I went and discussed it with them and found out they didn't have any intention to produce it, which was a relief. I don't think I could have done a commissioned film produced by Vatican TV or something. They said, we just want to instigate it. If you like it, and if, then you have to run with it. You have to produce it and find a financing for it and distribution. It's going to have to be an independent film, and we're not going to interfere, we promise. And they kept their promise, and they said, we're going to give you pretty exclusive and privileged access to the Pope and access to the Vatican's film archives. And that altogether was something I couldn't refuse, and it was really too beautiful to be true. Except then when I started working, I realized, well, they really had left me with no idea. They didn't give me any parameters. I could really invent whatever I wanted, and in between I thought if they had only be a little bit more precise.
If you have rules, you at least know what to break.
Yes, totally. Rules are great. I mean, any filmmaker who learns how to live with rules or restrictions, they're a great thing. But if you out of a sudden have no rules and no parameters, and you have to just invent it on your own, that's quite a responsibility, considering that there's a man in front of the camera who is quite unique, the Pope himself.
I'm curious, you said you got the letter from the church and you took a walk around the block. I'm always fascinated by artists' process. Are you a big walker? Is that how you sort of settle on your ideas and come up with ideas? Does it help you think about
I
things?
need to walk. I need to walk around the block or go on a hike or get on my bike. I can't sit on my chair and resolve something. I need to move. But I'm going to stay here right now. Don't worry.
Well, let's get some questions from our audience. Who has a question out here? Right here.
Oh, hello. How are you? Thank you very much for making the film. I saw it on Monday, and I like the fact that you're really focused on the issues that Pope Francis stands for, which makes it very universal and actually very relevant today. My question is that, having said that, looking back, is there anything else that would you have changed? For example, remove something, added something, given the fact that you have, how many hours of interview clips with him, number one. And number two also is that, having this incredible access with him, is there anything that really surprised you about the man, having met with him and spoke with him?
The man himself was a great surprise. His openness was an amazing surprise, and the way he treated everybody the same on the set. When he first came in, he shook hands with everybody and exchanged words with everybody and didn't make a difference between producer, director, or electrician. And also when he left, he didn't make a big fuss about being the Pope. He was very approachable and very close to everybody, and he has this in his eyes when he's talking to people that make you realize he is the real deal. And already before he was the Pope, he was the same man. Well, I didn't know him then, but I saw that in all the documents I saw. He is very unpretentious and fearless. And that was the big revelation for me. He is totally fearless. He knows what he wants and why he wants it, and he's driven by an incredible positive energy. I'm a born optimist, but I've never met somebody who is so much more of an optimist and a positive character, and this positive energy and emanating from him really took me by surprise.
Next question.
Yes, hi, nice to see you again. This is about process a little bit. You talk about being a good talker is a better listener. And I'm just wondering about empathy and your relationship to empathy and what you look in your choices of both your mythical stories and your real documentaries. What is it about empathy in you?
there's different impulses from which you can make a movie. Some people really need a critical distance to make a movie about something, and some people really want to reveal something and find out something. And my impulse to make a film, not only a documentary, but especially documentary, is that I like something very, very much, and I want to share that. If you want a critical distance to something, you're asking the wrong guy. I heard the music of these old men from Havana, and I thought, I need to share this with everybody. And I love the art of German choreographer Pina Bausch so much, and that was the most beautiful thing I'd ever witnessed. And for 20 years, I tried to figure out how I can convey that to other people until 3D came out. So my films are totally depending on the fact that I connect emotionally and that I'm close to something, and I want to share that closeness and convey that. So, and I think it's not different with my fictional films. I need to love these characters. I shot a film, for instance, long ago, The American Friend, and there are all these gangsters in the movies. And I had taken on that film because it was written by Patricia Highsmith, the book, and I loved her, and I wanted to film a book of hers. And then I was stuck with this character, Ripley, and he was a mean and cynical man. And I eventually realized I don't know how to deal with that. I don't know any guys like that, and I actually don't like him. So I tried to find an actor who could play that and who I would still like. And that became Dennis Hopper. And that was a long friendship between us. And all the other crooks in the movie I cast with fellow directors, because they are the only crooks I know.
I assume that also helped you in empathize with them, having friendly directors around, people that off camera you're having conversations that you relate to very much.
I know the way we have to cheat, and I know the fights we have to fight, so I empathize with directors, yes. Like, for instance, when I was a film student, I had to write reviews. I made my living as a critic. But I never wrote about a film I didn't like. I mean, you see, that's a disease I have. I can't do that. I think it's a waste of time writing a review in order to slash something. I don't like that. I only wrote about films I liked, and that's me, period. And I make films about people I like, period.
Next question.
Right here. Hi.
Hey.
I'm wondering, when you produced or made this film, if you kept in mind people who aren't necessarily Catholic or even Christian, what would they look for in a movie like this?
Thank you for pointing that out. Pope Francis doesn't necessarily want to address Catholics or Christians. He really wants to speak to people of goodwill. And for him, that includes atheists just as well. And he says it at one point really very clearly. God loves you, no matter what religion you are in. And even if you're an atheist, his love is the same. And even if you're rejected, he doesn't care. So his deep belief is that we are all equal, and God sees us as equal no matter what religion we are. And I thought that was amazing, from the mouth of the Pope saying we are all equal and God loves all of us. And that is a beautiful message of, in a world where we make such a fuss about being different, and actually that's one of the diseases, I think, of our times today, that we all try to be not only different, but we leave all these people behind who are not on a level with us, economically, socially, for lots of reasons. We leave too many people behind, and I think his effort is to make all people of goodwill realize that we do need some sort of moral revolution on this planet, and that includes everybody. That's certainly not addressed to Christians.
I think we have time for one more.
So
there he is.
You've done narrative films and documentaries. In recent years, you've even gone into 3D. I wanted to know, at this point in your career, what inspires you? What do you think of cinema in 2018 at this point in your career, and what do you do to pick the film you're going to do next?
I'm getting older, so the question for me is not really what film to pick next, but what films not to do, because every film you're doing is going to take 2 or 3 years of your life. This one took 4. So you got to really be careful with your lifetime. So it's got to be worth it, and I have to be... But that goes also for young filmmakers today. You have to know that you have to fight for it, and you have to be ready to carry that light. If I compare a movie to a light, you have to carry that light all through the whole process from beginning to the end, and you're the only one who's carrying it. There's a lot of people trying to blow it out, that light, and in between you have to pass it on to your actors and your cameraman or your composer, all these people you work with. But as a director, you have to keep that light burning, and you have to know in the beginning that you have it in you to care for it enough to let it burn until you have it on the screen. And even when you talk to people afterwards, because your job is only finished when people seeing the movie. The movie doesn't exist when you make it. It doesn't exist as a print or DVD or whatever. It only exists when people see it. So you're responsible until people see it. And that, you need to know that you have the strength to go along all the way.
Did you ever make a film where you were unable to carry the light throughout the whole process?
Yes. It was the damn second movie. So I recommend to everybody to just skip the second. Go to the third.
What happened?
You see, I was so fond of this American novel called Scarlet Letter, Nathaniel Hawthorne. When I graduated in English, I wrote about Nathaniel Hawthorne and the Scarlet Letter. So after my first film, which was relatively successful, I got this big offer of making a historical film. I thought, okay, I can handle it. Scarlet Letter, of course, I love that novel. And then I realized I had no talent whatsoever to make a period movie. It just didn't work out for me. I realized in the making of the movie, I'm not interested to shooting only this way, because here everything is 17th century and there everything is 20th century. So I can't turn my camera here. I hated it. I wanted cars in my movie. I wanted jukeboxes.
You kind of lose track of your imagination.
Yes, I didn't believe in the costumes. I thought it was all phony. And I had to see it through, of course. I couldn't walk away, but I realized there's things I can't do. And also I couldn't shoot it in Salem, Massachusetts, where it's placed. We lost some of our financing. In the end, I had to shoot it in Spain. And I had to shoot it in one of these Western villages where they shot the spaghetti westerns. That became New England, 17th century for me. It was ridiculous. The whole thing was utterly ridiculous, and I was responsible for it, and I had to see it through. So I learned the hard way, don't do anything that you can't really believe in and that you can handle.
When you say had to see it through, were you able to present a version of yourself to the crew and actors and everything as if you were still carrying the light, while at the same time you knew maybe deep inside?
I think they knew how desperate I was, but they also sort of realized I had no choice. I was the producer. Right. We were a young production company, and if that movie would have sunk, or if we hadn't finished it, we were all dead.
That's movies, right?
Yeah. So
be left holding the bag.
Skip the second, go to the third.
Wim, congratulations on the film. It's
Thank you.
beautiful. You do a wonderful job. You tell his story incredibly, and he's great on camera.
He has an incredible presence, and that is, of course, is a great gift of some of the great actors, but he's not an actor. He is what he represents, and he has this very powerful presence. And I thought every day that I could be close to him was a gift, and I hope I can pass that gift on to the audience.
I think you do. Everybody, please, Wim
Thanks,
Wenders,
Ricky.
let's hear it.
Thanks.